What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and it is time for a Ted's Top 10 video. We're going to be talking about the top 10 wizard magic items of this go around. So we're coming up to the end of the year. We're going to get top 10 wizard magic items out of the way, and then next week we'll do Blood Hunter, and that'll finish us out for 2022. If you want to see what the specifics are for this, stay tuned. So again, this is probably not going to come as a surprise to anybody who's been watching this series thus far, but here are the specific breakdowns of what we're including in this. We are only including up to very rare rarity magic items, so no legendaries in this video. Yes, there are a bunch of really awesome legendary magic items like the Robes of the Ars Magi, which would be on this list if legendary items were allowed, but they're kind of in a power level all of their own, so they're not going to be included in here. We are not going to include any consumable magic items. Obviously, wizards make use of a lot of scrolls, but we're also not going to include anything that has a finite number of charges. I think the Rod of Absorption is one that, like, it absorbs so much and then it's gone. Same thing with, like, the Chime of Opening. We're not going to include any of the tomes or manuals that increase an ability score by 2 because those are all great. I didn't say this in the past couple ones, but we're only covering, first-party official Wizards of the Coast stuff here. We're not doing anything third-party. There's an unlimited amount of third-party stuff to go through. So, also, this should be paired with the first video in this series, which was top 10 magic items for all classes. A lot of the stuff that I recognized appeared on a lot of my original lists when I had done this years ago was included in that one instead, so that way you can focus on those, and then these are the specific to wizard. Also, this will be subclass agnostic, right? Obviously, the way a blade singer plays potentially could be drastically different than an illusionist. However, this is going to be things that are useful for any wizard, and then obviously you can kind of tailor certain things to fit your playstyle a little bit more. Hope that all makes sense. Let's dive in. Number 10. I really struggle about putting the Headband of Intellect on here because you're a wizard, right? In theory, the thing you should be focusing on the most is when you're building out your ability scores, in theory, right, is your intelligence. That's going to drive the majority of your class features. Here's the thing, though. The Headband of Intellect is an uncommon attunement magic item from the basic rules, and I feel like DMs are more willing to give out uncommon items and possibly even let you shop for them with relative ease. And this puts your intelligence at a 19. Now, the highest you can normally achieve in an intelligence score in the game is 20. So again, the reason they put it at 19 is to make it slightly better than, whatever the previous even number was, which was, obviously 18. And I always struggle on whether or not I should include something like this on a list like this. But wizards are lucky enough to have access to something like the Helm of Intellect. All of the Wisdom and Charisma casters don't have something similar, which I do feel like is a very simple homebrew. In older editions, there was always an item of some kind that boosted an ability score, right? We have the Belts of Giant Strength here, but we had, Gloves of Dexterity, Cloak of Charisma, things like that would boost an ability score. They seem to have pretty much gone away from the concept of boosting ability scores, with the exception of the Belt of Dwarven Kind, and instead are just giving you things that set your score at a certain number. So, in theory, you could be a very successful, powerful wizard and dump your intelligence stat by having access to a Headband of Intellect. Or it could be a means to an end. Perhaps you get in a Headband of Intellect early on, and while maybe you rolled poorly or you went with point buy and decided to prioritize maybe dexterity and constitution and are sitting at maybe a 16 or a 14 intelligence, the Headband of Intellect can bridge that gap while you possibly use your ability scores to get up eventually to 18, and then you don't need the headband anymore. The only downside is the majority of the power of your spell casting would come from an item, and you'd essentially have an attunement magic item, the one slot taken up the whole time. Number 9. Bracers of Defense. These are pretty simple. They're an attunement rare magic item from the basic rules, and if you're not wearing armor, they boost your AC by 2. Now, this does work with something like mage armor, which is the reason why they're on this list and weren't on something like the warlock or the sorcerer. As a wizard, you have a lot of spells prepared, and your spellbook can be significantly larger to the point where you can, add spells to your spellbook via scrolls. So you have the repertoire of spells to make sense to have Mage Armor be one of the spells that you take. Now, obviously, things like the Elven Chain could fit in here as well, but if you have a decent enough dexterity, possibly because you're using a Headband of Intellect, you could cast Mage Armor from your spellbook, possibly just stack up on a whole bunch of scrolls of Mage Armor. Obviously, that would work for the other groups, but you could have it as one of your prepared spells every day. Cast Mage Armor, make your AC 13 plus your dex, pop on the Bracers of Defense, and add 2 more. Again, I'd say this is kind of interchangeable with the Elven Chain, depending on what your ability scores look like.
Number 8.
The Mizzium Apparatus. This uncommon attunement magic item comes to us from our friends over in the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. And this is a pretty interesting device slash magic item. First of all, it looks really cool, and it's nice enough to have one that actually has the art of it. But it actually provides some pretty interesting benefits regardless. So it can be used as an arcane focus, which is cool. And you can use it to cast a spell that you don't know or have prepared. So the spell you choose must be on your class's spell list and of a level for which you have a spell slot, and you must provide the components. But again, as someone like a wizard, you have the largest spell list of any class, so you can possibly use this as an opportunity to pull forth a spell that you didn't have prepared or that you just never even took the opportunity to learn. And you just basically say it, and then you have to make a check. So that's the offset, right? So you expend a spell slot to cast the spell as normal, but before resolving it, you must make an Intelligence Arcana check. The DC is 10 plus twice the level of the spell slot you expend to cast the spell. So depending on what you're trying to do, this could be difficult, right? A second level spell becomes a DC 14 Arcana check, but who knows, right? Maybe you need a specific spell for a situation and didn't choose to prepare it or just didn't have it. Right, you wanted to cast Sending because you needed to do it and you didn't have it prepared. So it's a DC 16 Arcana check. And, you could obviously build into this to make your Arcana checks better if you so chose. On a successful check, the spell is cast as normal using your spell save DC and spellcasting ability modifier. On a failed check, you cast a different spell from the one you intended. Randomly determine the spell you cast by rolling on the table for the level of the spell slot you expended. If it's 6th level or higher, roll on the 5th level spells table. And if you try to cast a cantrip that you don't know, the DC for the Arcana check is 10. And on a failed check, there is no effect. So here you can see there are 6 options for first level spells, right? Burning Hands, Chaos Bolt, Color Spray, Fairy Fire, Fog Cloud, Thunder Wave, Blur, Gust of Wind, Heat Metal, Melts, Acid Arrow, Scorching Ray, Shatter. So there are really good spells on this list. So potentially you could just do it and then hope to possibly fail to pull out one of these spells. Or, if you're casting, I didn't prep Fireball today for some weird reason. Let me try it, and it's a DC 16 Arcana check, and you fail. You could roll a 3 and still cast the Fireball. Confusion, Ivar's Black Tentacles, Animate Objects. So there's really good spells here, and it just adds a lot of variety. And again, the versatility of being able to pull potentially any spell from your spell list without having to go through the effort of learning or preparing it.
Number 7.
The Illusionist Bracers, these very rare attunement magic item, comes to us from Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. Now, this is useful for a wizard, but I'd still argue that it was more useful for the warlock, given the fact that they have ready access to Eldritch Blast. But the way this works is, while you're wearing them, whenever you cast a cantrip, you can use a bonus action on the same turn to cast that cantrip a second time. So, obviously, you could think of a bunch of different ways you could use this. For example, I cast Firebolt, and then I can cast Firebolt again. A great example, this is a fantastic Blade Singer magic item because you can replace one of your attacks with a cantrip, and then attack a second time, and then this would potentially allow you to bonus action use that cantrip again. The obviously normal choices, I feel like a lot of the time for these are things like Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade, but you could cast it, attack, and then cast it again. A lot of interesting synergies here, and then again, because you have such a big list of cantrips to pick from, you could really do a whole lot of interesting variety with how you want to use this, right? The only thing that would be is if you cast a cantrip that's concentration, and you go to cast it a second time as a bonus action, you drop concentration on the first one. But again, you can't really argue with like back-to-back Ray of Frosts, for example. 2 Ray of Frost in a turn could possibly lower someone's movement speed. I think that would stack together and lower it by 20 feet. So that's pretty interesting.
Number 6.
The Blast Scepter. This very rare attunement magic item comes to us from Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and a 1 can be used as an arcane focus, and 2 grants whoever wields it resistance to fire and lightning damage, 2 very common damage types, and gives you the opportunity as an action to cast Thunder Wave as a 4th level spell with a spell save DC of 16 as often as you like, as long as you have the action to cast it. So this is a way for you to deal damage. Again, not saying that you're the damaging kind of wizard, but it's an AoE, and it's a 4th level spell, which it's 2d8 for a base, so 3d8, 48. So it's a 5d8 AoE spell that you could cast in theory, every turn as an action without ever expending a spell slot, and that's pretty awesome.
Number 5.
The Dragon Touched Focus. This varied variety, or varied rarity rather, magic item comes to us from Tasha's Cauldron and everything. No, it doesn't. It comes to us from Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. And the way these dragon-specific items is a horde magic item, so there's a little bit of a process to get them, but they can level up to a very rare, and then eventually, if you wanted to, legendary, but that's outside of the scope of this video. The base level slumbering version of this gives you advantage on initiative rolls, and while you are holding it, you can use it as a spellcasting focus. If you were to get it to the stirring level, and then that would change to rarity, it gives you an opportunity or a different benefit based on the type of dragon that it's based on. I think for you, the best bet as a wizard, again, possibly dealing more of damaging type, would be the chromatic one. Whenever you use a spell slot to cast a spell that deals acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison damage, roll a d6. You gain a bonus equal to the number to one of the spell's damage rolls. So you could roll up to a d6 extra damage. I think this is pretty useful for you as a wizard because you do have a variety of damage types to deal. Some classes may only have 1 or 2 damage types and maybe not even all of the ones listed here. So this gives you a little more variety. You could also, if you are Gem, whenever you cast a spell using a spell slot, immediately teleport to a space within 15 feet. That could be a good way to get out of, jail free card if you're in trouble and you have the Gem Dragon version. And then the Metallic is when a creature you can see within 30 feet, if you makes a saving throw, you can use your reaction to give them advantage. Again, a little bit of group synergy and helping out the party. And then the Wakened level, which is the very rare version, gives you the opportunity to cast some spells with it once per day, basically. So once the item is used to cast a spell, it can't be used to cast that spell again until the next dawn. Let's see. You can, they're determined, family of dragons, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So your options are, if you have chromatic, it's hold monster and rhymes binding ice. Gem is Rary's telepathic bond and Ralathim's psychic lance. And metallic is Fizban's platinum shield and legend lore. Again, I think chromatic is probably the winner overall in my mind, but either way, they're all useful, and it's 2 free, pretty powerful, useful spells. Again, metallic, Fizban's platinum shield's not bad if you have the concentration to give up for it. And legend lore is something you're never gonna be sad that you have access to, because you could possibly use it to get the DM to give you a little more exposition on the story beats that you're working on.
Number 4.
The Robe of Stars. This very rare attunement magic item is basically a nice set of robes for you to wear till you get Robes of the Archmagi, and also like a slightly better magic or wand of magic missile. First of all, it looks badass. I love the look of it, and it gives you a +1 bonus to your saving throws while wearing it. And you can pluck off the stars and fling them at people, which when you do, casts a 5th level magic missile spell. And then daily at dusk, a d6 of the stars return, allowing you to continue to cast that spell again. Possibly, again, you could cast, if you have all 6 and then roll a 6, you could, in theory, cast 12 5th level magic missiles all in the course of one singular day without ever touching a spell slot. And if that wasn't enough, it also has a really good get out of jail free card with the ability to use an action to enter the astral plane, and then remain there until you use an action to come back. Again, you come back into the same spot you were in or the nearest unoccupied spot, but if people don't know that you're there, you could use it as a way to kind of sneak into a place, or, just how to, like, if you're in a combat and things are getting hairy and you're low on hit points, you could bamf to the astral plane and just hang out there, maybe pop a couple potions or just wait it out, see what happens.
Number 3.
For this, I'm calling them basically the wizard books from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. These are all rare, they all require attunement by a wizard, and there is a different version of a variety of different books. They all provide you with 4 or 5, maybe even 6 different spells that you can cast from the book. It also functions as a spell book for you. They also all have, and they can also be used as a spellcasting focus. They all have 3 charges, get a D3 charges daily, back daily at dawn, and basically they all have the same first ability, which is if you spend 1 minute studying the book, you can expend one of its charges to replace one of your prepared wizard spells with a different spell in the book. The new spell must be of the X school, right? So for the alchemical compendium, it must be transmutation and so on. There's one for each of the schools of magic. And then they also have some additional benefit that you can use by expending a charge. One that I'm a fan of is the Fulminating Treatise. This is the evocation-based one, right? Contingency, Fireball, Gust of Wind, Leomund's Tiny Hut, Magic Missile, Thunderwave, Wall of Force. And then the option here is when one creature you can see takes damage from an evocation spell that you cast, you can use your reaction to expend 1 charge to deal an extra 2d6 force damage to the creature and knock them prone if they're large or smaller. It says with a spell you cast, evocation spell you cast, so I think that does still technically apply to cantrips, doing extra 2d6 force damage and an auto knock prone if they're large or smaller. I do think this is one of the stronger ones, although I do also think the Heartweaver's Primer is pretty good. This is the enchantment-based one, because its ability is when you cast an enchantment spell, you can expend 1 charge to impose disadvantage on the first saving throw one target makes against the spell, which is pretty powerful depending on what kind of enchantment spell you're casting. Some of these can lock groups down for a while if they were to, say, fail that first saving throw, and you could possibly impose disadvantage. Like I said, there are a variety of these here. It's just you would pick whichever one works best for your particular wizard. Now, you don't necessarily have to be, if you're an illusionist wizard, take the duplicitous manuscript, as that's the illusion-based one. You might find more benefits from it because you may be taking more spells of a specific school. But again, we can use Bladesinger as an example. They don't really fit into any of these. You could take whichever one works best for your character.
Number 2.
The Staff of Power. This is a very rare attunement magic item, comes to us from the basic rules, and you've seen me cover this before. It provides a ton of passive and active benefits for a wizard. +2 bonus to attack and damage rolls made with the magic staff itself, plus a +2 bonus to your armor class saving throws and spell attack rolls. It also has 20 charges, gets 2d8 plus 4 charges back daily at dawn, and then has the standard if you roll a 1 after the last charge is expended, it could possibly be limited. In this instance, it would still remain a +2 quarterstaff, but everything else would go away. You can use Power Strike. When you hit with a melee part of the staff attack, you can expend 1 charge to deal an extra D6 force damage. Or spells, where you can expend charges to cast one of the following, using your spell save DC and attack bonus. Cone of Cold for 5, 5th level Fireball for 5 charges, Globe of Invulnerability for 6, Hold Monster for 5, Levitate for 2, 5th level Lightning Bolt for 5, Magic Missile for 1, Ray of Enfeeblement for 1, and Wall of Force for 5. And then it also has the Retributive Strike ability, which is basically where you crack the staff over your knee, and it explodes and does 8 times, or does damage basically on a cascading effect based on how close you are. If you're within the 10-foot radius, it does 8 times the number of charges in the staff worth of damage. Again, reminder that the max staff that you have charges is 20, so that's a pretty substantial amount of damage you'll be able to do if you so choose to do that. I think this has to be a last-ditch effort. It's a very powerful, very rare magic item, and for you to crack it over your knee to just do burst damage, again, I imagine that for the most part, you're only going to do this if this is a last resort, or you somehow happen to have 2 staffs of power and you want to just blow one. And then again, there's an opportunity or potential when you explode for you to be teleported to another plane of existence, a random plane, to avoid the explosion damage.
Number 1.
The Arcane Grimoire. This varied rarity attunement magic item comes to us from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. And similar to a lot of the other items we got in Tasha's Cauldron that do based on the rarity, they increase a thing for you. That's what we have here. So this book can be used as a spellcasting focus for your wizard, and it gives you a bonus to your spell attack rolls and your spell save DC based on the rarity. Uncommon gives you +1, rare gives you +2, and very rare gives you +3. Again, the uncommon version is still immensely useful, and it's something that if you can get access to relatively early on, will be huge. Again, we could, for example, if you happen to have the, not that I want to load you out with all uncommon magic items, but if you happen to have the Headband of Intellect and the uncommon version of the Arcane Grimoire, you essentially have what would be, a spell attack bonus and a spell save DC of a level, of a character with, an intelligence score of 20 for just the cost of 2 uncommon magic items. If that wasn't enough, this book also gives you an additional benefit. You can use this book as a spell book, which we kind of figured, and when you use your arcane recovery feature, you can increase the number of spell slots you regain by 1. For those of you who don't know, arcane recovery is basically once a day on a short rest. As a wizard, you can get half of your level worth, your wizard level of spell slots back. I think it's rounded up. So if you're level 10, you can get up to 5 spell slots back on a short rest once per day when you do the arcane recovery. Now this could be 1 5th level spell, 4 first level spells, or however you want to break it down. This gives you 1 additional level on top of that, which is pretty cool. The number of slots, so 1 additional slot in that way. So when I said you would have 5 if you were level 10, you would now have up to 6 spell slots to regain if you so chose. So there you go, folks. That is my top 10 magic items for the D&D 5e Wizard. We will be back next week covering the Blood Hunter because so many of you have asked me to do that, and a lot of people do seem to consider the Blood Hunter as basically the unofficial 14th class of D&D 5e. So we'll be covering that. I hope to see you with more videos between now and the holiday. However, I also, there's a pretty nasty storm coming in. And again, for those of you who know what I do for my day job, storms really wreck what I have going on. So I know I'll be doing night shifts in the next couple of days, 12-hour overnight night shifts, if not longer than that. I'm just hopeful that if there is inclement weather, like they're expecting there to be, and the damage is there, that I'm able to hopefully finish it up and get everything restored and all the power back on before Christmas so I can spend it with my family. But if not, I'll be working because, you know what? That's what we do here, right? We took these jobs with where we're out there working all the time. You take a job for a utility, that's just what happens, right? You have to work. So anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful holiday, whatever holidays that you two choose to celebrate. And yeah, I'm excited for 2023. I'll be making a video closer to the new year talking about what my plans are and things I want to see and want to work on come 2023. But anyway, in the meantime, thank you to my patrons over on Patreon for supporting me and the channel, and I'll see you all next time.